Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and it's big news as Manchester United release images of the new stadium. I'll be showing you them in a few seconds time, but the Glazers win again. I think that is a conversation we'll be talking about. Spin for the win. The Glazers own the club. The Glazers wanted this regeneration project. I think whatever you thought about the interview last night, fundamentally, Glazers own Sir Jim Ratcliffe and he is a puppet. We'll go through a lot of that stuff. We'll also talk about some footballing matters, concerns around Lenny Yoro, as discussed yesterday morning, also around Mateta. But without further ado, these are new quotes. These have literally been released in the last minute or so. This is your new stadium for Manchester United. Old Trafford will be no more. There is the stadium on the right in all its glory. These are the official designs. We've got some quotes coming in a moment as well. We've got a letter from 2018 from the Glazers to Trafford Council as well, talking about the regeneration project and a new stadium. It's amazing, isn't it, that it's Sir Jim's project and yet the Glazers were proposing this years before he even bought Nice, years before they'd even spoke. But there it is. I mean, look, it's divisive. Do you like it? Don't you like it? That's your initial look at it. I've got a couple of more images to give you as well. Look, I've heard people calling it a circus tent. Some people have said it looks like a circus tent, which I suppose if you're being cynical could be quite apt because we are a circle. I think it looks a little bit like, you know, in the morning if you've got grass in the summer and the mist and the dew, and then there's people like there's spider webs on it. I think it looks a little bit like that. Or another one, maybe, you know, like a summer pavlova where you pull the peaks on the meringue up. Looks a little bit like that. But look, you know, each to their own. Yeah, cobwebs, circus tents, pavlova. There are other images as well. This is what it'll be like inside. This is where they make the real money. Look, this is where they get you in and have a little bit of a pop concert and all that stuff there. That's what it looks like inside. And then this is what it looks like from distance. Reminds me, if you're of a certain age, of the Munich Olympic Stadium from the 70s. Look, I don't want a new stadium, so I feel that my opinion on this is always going to be, you know, well, you don't want a new stadium. But what I would say is I expected more of a Atletico Madrid's design, more of a Bernabeu design, more of an Emirates design from outside. I just think that does look like... I didn't come up with it, so I'm not going to claim the banter here. But now somebody said circus tent. I can't. I just see a circus tent. Apparently, the three peaks are to do with the tridents. But yeah, I don't like it, if I'm being honest. But look, some people are going to love it, and this is what happens when you get a new stadium. Some people will love it, and some people won't. I'm not going to. You know, dwell on it too much. What I will say is that we have got some quotes coming out from people as well. Where we've had, obviously, Lord Sebastian Coe, works for the regeneration. He's the chair of the task force. Today marks an important step forward in what I believe can be the biggest and most exciting regeneration project in the UK since 2012. Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Greater Manchester. Our common goal on the task force has been to try and unlock the full power for the club, for the benefit of its supporters and for Greater Manchester as a whole, creating thousands of new homes and new jobs. If we can get it right, then it'll be better than London 2012. The designer of this, Lord Norman Foster, says this has to be one of the most exciting projects in the world today with incredible regional and national significance. Sir Alex Ferguson, again, a spokesman for the Glazers. Manchester United should always strive for the best in everything it does, on and off the pitch, and that includes the stadium we play in. Old Trafford holds so many special memories for me personally, but we must be brave and seize this opportunity to build a new home, fit for the future, where new history can be made. I'll tell you what my problem is with that, with Sir Alex Ferguson, is at no point does he acknowledge that Old Trafford never should have been knocked down if the Glazers hadn't let it rot. I understand why we're building a new stadium, but why is nobody, apart from fans, saying this never should have happened in the first place? I think people admit that we've got to do this because the Glazers let it rust and rot. It's like you get Neville and Sir Alex and Sir Jim just going, oh, let's be brave, let's build a new stadium. Let's talk about why the old one's getting knocked down. Let's talk about why the old one hasn't been renovated, like Anfield or the Bernabeu or the Nou Camp or whatever like that. There is a reason why this is happening, and it's just sweep it under the carpet and let's be brave. Omar Barada, our long-term objective as a club is to have the world's best football team playing in the world's best stadium. Yeah, words. Also, Sir Jim Radcliffe, today marks the start of an incredibly exciting journey to the delivery of what will be the world's greatest football stadium at the centre of a regenerated Old Trafford. I think it is what it is. And look, I suppose we'll get your comments on it, but my overarching feeling is that the Glazers have won. And I can show you this picture here. Which was on a video we did ages ago. From the 14th of September 2018, strategic planning. Dear Trafford Council, CBRE Limited has been instructed by Manchester United Football Club to submit a representative to Trafford's local plan consultation and call for sites in respect of landholding in the borough. This letter, which is out there for public consumption, basically talks about the regeneration of the area, a new stadium, etc. That letter is dated 2018 and it's there for public consumption. Here we are 7 years later. You've got Sir Jim Radcliffe, you've got Sir Alex Ferguson, you've got Andy Burnham, you've got Sebastian Coe, you've got Gary Neville giving his voice towards it. All these people basically, amazing, Manchester. In 2018, that's where it started, a letter from the Glazers. They're all puppets for the Glazers. This is, the Glazers have won here. You got protests on Sunday. You got an interview on Monday between two people on the committee for the regeneration project, and then you've got the announcement of a new stadium on the Tuesday. I mean, if you're not waking up this morning feeling dizzy, you got spun. You've been absolutely spun. And people last night said it wasn't PR. But come on. Wake up and smell the coffee this morning. You got played. You got absolutely played. You saw an interview. You thought, oh, I like Sir Jim. He's talking sense. He's a puppet for the Glazers. He's admitted that in the interview himself. He's defended the Glazers. We'll read that out in a moment. You got protests on Sunday. You got a PR interview on Monday. And then you got bloody, here's a new stadium on Tuesday. And who wins? Protests get diluted. Glazers win. PR spin. Glazers win. New stadium. Glazers win. I don't care about the interview. I don't care about whether you like Sir Jim or Gary or the new stadium or anything like that. Who owns Manchester United? How much debt are we in? And what's the future for Manchester United? I'll tell you what the future is for Manchester United. Chaos around protests and concerns. Regeneration project will only get off the ground with positivity. 60% of you voted for a new stadium. Here's your new shiny toy. Forget the protests. Forget what's happening on the pitch. Forget the debt. Here's your new stadium that's going to happen at some time in the future. Now be good and be quiet. And that's what we are. I mean, we can all argue about whether you like Sir Jim or whether you like the interview or anything like that. It's pure and utter spin. Focus. I'm not interested in anything else. All I'm interested in is the Glazers. And have you noticed in the last 12 hours, the amount of Glazer sympathisers who've come out again talking about, well, what do you want Sir Jim to say? His long-term plan is to get the Glazers out of the football club. So he's not going to say anything bad about them because he's trying to manipulate them. He's trying to make them sell him the rest of the club. So that's back again now. That's if you don't like what's going on at Man United now, you're the enemy. Oh, one interview in a new stadium and they've won. One interview and a stadium and the Glazers have won again. And they've split the fan base again. And if you say anything negative about the stadium or the interview or puppets, then you're the negative one. Look, I actually read some comments last night of people saying, oh, you know what, Mark, I wish you just wouldn't talk about it anymore because I don't want to be negative anymore. I want to believe that Sir Jim's the future and I really liked his interview. Oh, really? Okay, well, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But, if you are, I'd be waking up this morning embarrassed because you got spun. Did you see the BBC interview? It was basically a parroted version of Gary Neville's interview. Those questions were all prepared. And it was all about the stadium. Nothing he said in that interview actually mattered. It was all preparation for the stadium announcement today, because that's the thing. And the thing about the stadium is, when you've got protests and you've got upheaval, it's not good. They won't get that regeneration project funded if there is upheaval around the football club. So they need to get you on board. They need everything to be positive. And ultimately, who owns the football club? The Glazers. Who set the wheels in motion for this 7 years ago? The Glazers. Who hasn't made a statement today? The Glazers. You got the Mayor of Manchester, you got Sir Jim Ratcliffe, you got Sir Alex Ferguson, you've got Omar Barada, you got Sebastian Coe, but you haven't got one of the Glazers saying anything. Because all of those people have said, from a PR point of view, you just need to stay in the background. We know you're going to make the most money out of it, but you need to stay out of the... And we know it was your idea, but you need to stay out in the background. So, look, whatever you think of the stadium, and if you're tuning in a little bit late, I'm just going to show you another picture of the circus, as some people are calling it. So that's what Old Trafford's going to look like. Well, it won't be Old Trafford, will it? It'll be knocked down and rebuilt. But that's the idea. The circus tent is what you know what? It's not even been built, and our rivals are going to call it the circus tent. That it's already on Twitter. So, you know, personally, whatever. But some would say it suits us. I don't know, but yeah, look, that's where we are. Mark Lawton says, last night proved the ownership live in spreadsheets, playing numbers games and have no respect for the club, its history and the fans. New stadium's an absolute disgrace, soul gone, says Daniel. Patrick Lynch says, a question to people who think Sir Jim Ratcliffe's interview was good is this: what timeline is acceptable for United to get back to competing? At best, it will be a decade. Is that acceptable? Neville said on Sunday it wasn't good enough, says Patrick Lynch. Spider-Man swung over the stadium with diarrhea, says Cryptic Celt. Mark, we will be the most profitable club in the world. Unfortunately, the Glazers won, says Tony Marshall. Well, I did look very, very quickly. I did a video this morning talking about the new stadium. I didn't know what the images and the pictures were, but the plan will be to borrow to build, and it will take us about 10 to 15 years to pay it back. So, as Patrick says, we're already $1 billion in debt. We're going to borrow more money to build a stadium. They reckon they might be able to build it in 5 years. So if it's going to take 15 years to build it off, that's 20 years. 5 to build, 15 to pay it off, that's 20 years before we start making big profit. So, you know, I might be in an old people's home by then, if I'm lucky enough to still be here. Some of you, you know, your 5-year-old kid will be 25. So it's going to take a long time, isn't it, to be profitable, I think. I'm more disgusted than when Mark's telly switched to Peppa Pig, says Robinski. How will another $2 billion of debt affect our future spending ability, says Rob Always United. Look, I'd rather fix the roof and give the money to Amrim, to be honest. I'd rather be better on the pitch, but, you know, that's not going to make the Glazers money. And I think, to be completely honest here, if I had £500 million, I would spend it on the team, because all that matters to me is the team. I don't care about the circus tent. I just care about the team. The Glazers are going to spend £500 million on something that's physical, that's going to make them money. And the team won't necessarily do that. Although actually it probably would. They want to build it. So look, if you want to talk about the interview, you want to talk about the pictures, let's do it. But what I think's happened in the last 48 hours is thousands of Man United fans expressed dissatisfaction at the Glazer ownership and the debt. We had an interview where Sir Jim Ratcliffe thought that the protests were about where we are in the league. That interview was conducted between two people who are both factually on the committee for the regeneration of that area. The next day, we get pictures and sound bites of the regeneration of the area. So, break it down. Protests, two people on the committee do an interview together, calm things down, and talk about the regeneration project, which is revealed today. If that ain't bloody spin, then I don't know what you think spin is. Like, Gary Neville and Sir Jim Ratcliffe are on the committee for regeneration of that area, and here are the pictures and here's the stadium. And the Glazers, look, Gary Neville and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, in my opinion, are puppets for the Glazers. Oh, but they don't like the Glazers. They don't like the Glazers. But why are they working with the Glazers then? Because they're going to make money out of it? I mean, call me a cynic. I think hotel football gets knocked down and Gary Neville makes a load of money. Or, call me a cynic, he expands hotel football because if you've suddenly got a load of houses and a load of media outlets and a load of cinemas and a load of pop concerts and a bigger Old Trafford, then your hotel is going to get more full, isn't it? So, you know, this is what surprises me about that interview last night, is how people sit there and go, it was a good interview. I like what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said. Okay, if you fell into the trap of cinema and you've watched it and quite enjoyed the film, that's fine. But tell me and everybody else that they're not puppets for the overarching Glazers who basically played this whole thing for years. And if you don't think that, go and read this document. Go and find this document. I'll tell you where it is. 2018 breaks down what's happening today from the Glazers. They were in contact with the council in 2018 talking about all of this way before Sir Jim Ratcliffe or Gary Neville got involved. So, you know, I don't care what you think about Sir Jim. I don't care what you think about Barada. I don't care what you think about Gary Neville. It really doesn't matter. I think they're all puppets for the Glazers. Fight me. That's the only thing. The Glazers. People were protesting about the Glazers. People were protesting about the debt. It's the Glazers, and they've won again. And anybody who goes, oh, I quite liked the interview, I quite liked the pictures, I quite liked what happened, they're puppets. They are absolute puppets. I don't actually have a problem with Sir Jim Ratcliffe anymore. He's just a glorified CEO. He's on the payroll. He is just a Glazer puppet. That's all he is. That's my takeaway now. I actually thought he had power. I actually thought, you know, he knew what he was on about. He's just a Glazer puppet. They're sat in the background running this show without any kickback. And they're about to double their money. So you can talk about regeneration of Manchester. You can talk about jobs. You can talk about housings. You can talk about an amazing stadium. The Glazers wanted 5 billion for Manchester United. In 5 years' time, it's going to be worth 10. This project is going to double the Glazers' value of that football club. And you ask why they hung around, well, there's your answer. They're building this in 5 years. And they're going to make a lot of money. So talk about Mateta, talk about Amrim, talk about the Europa League, talk about the Champions League. You got spun. You got played. Protests, interview, new stadium, 5 years, Glazers win. They never, ever, ever would have been allowed to knock Old Trafford down without Sir Jim coming in. They never would have got this off the ground without the connections with the government. The plan is there in front of you today. Why did the Glazers not sell Manchester United? Because the plan's just played out. It started in 2018. Sir Jim comes in 2024. Government back it, double your money, the Glazers win. Simple as that. And that's where we are, aren't we? What does it mean for our future? Well, look, all I'm really interested in is the football side of things. What it means for our future is I don't actually know. I look at Arsenal. They built their stadium and Wenger had to survive on a shoestring. I mean, did very well to keep them in the Champions League, 4th place cup for so many years. Didn't win a Premier League again. Looking at new stadiums that have been built in England, there's not a lot of blueprint for success. Arsenal went from one of the best teams in England, built a new stadium and haven't won the Premier League since. Spurs built a new stadium but have never won a Premier League. Liverpool obviously won't leave Anfield. Man City got handed a stadium. Chelsea have stayed at Stamford Bridge. So, yeah, I mean, look, there's not a lot of evidence there, is what I'm saying. I could be super cynical and say, look, Arsenal were one of the best teams in England. They were winning the league regularly. They built a new stadium and they've never won one since. You could use that anecdote. I don't think that's necessarily true. But what I would say is we're broke and we've got to borrow to fund this and we've got to pay it back. And Sir Jim Ratcliffe has said he'll make unpopular decisions. So get used to the next few summers, maybe the next 10 summers of, well, at the end of the day, you know, we built an amazing stadium that's going to make me a lot of money. Do you really think I'm going to find some for transfers? So I don't know. I think in 20 years' time we might be okay. But Liverpool and Arsenal and everybody else aren't going to sit back and wait for us, are they? I mean, they're going to be making. I think that the concern is, I read somewhere that this stadium will make us around 100 to 150 million pounds extra a year, which is, if we're making 700 million a year at the moment, That's a 15% increase in revenue by building a stadium. So no one's going to say no to that. So yeah, we could make another 100 and 150 million pounds a year, but we'll be paying that back for 10 years. So in about 15 years, we might be making another 150 million pounds a year in 15 years. Liverpool have just made 90 million in the last 6 months from being in the Champions League, and they'll be in it next year. So it's all right saying you're going to make 100, 150 million pounds a year from building a new stadium, but Liverpool are nearly making that just being in the Champions League, which we're not in. So yeah, and we've got to pay it back, of course. Of course we've got to pay it back. I want to get into some of your comments, and I've also got some really interesting stuff about Yoro and Mateta, but also just a few bits I missed from last night. Mark, you reminded me of a young Slim Shady, says Mike 9078. Maybe after the showers they went for an umbrella, says Glenn C. It looks like aliens have built it. It looks horrible, says Dale. Looks disgusting, just like the state of our club, says it's CJR. It's Old Trafford in fortnight, says John Anthony. Looks like a used prophylactic condom, says Perk. Clowns need to live somewhere, says John. I mean, is anybody in the chat actually like it? I mean, I don't. If I liked it, I'd say I like it. I don't want Old Trafford to get knocked down, but I know it has to get knocked down. But I don't like that. Like, I genuinely just don't like it. I think it looks like a circus tent. I think it looks like a spider's web. I just think it looks horrible. But some people might really like it. I mean, I find that claustrophobic for a start. I don't like the cover, but, you know, some people will. From a distance, does it look any better? I think the further away you get from it and the more it becomes a white blob, the better. But the closer you get, it just looks weird. But look, some people must like it because it's been signed off. And I'm sure some of you do like it. I mean, well, look, you know, art is art at the end of the day, isn't it? It might grow on you. Farge says, from Theatre of Dreams to Circus of Nightmares, looks like something Qatar would have built, says Luke. Look, when I like it, just to tell you what I do like. I like the smooth effects. I like the Atletico Madrid stadium. I like the Allianz. You know, I do like San Siro in the block way, but it's very old. I don't like this whole let's do, you know, Reddit, Perk says Reddit banterers have already dubbed it the Fishnet Stadium. It's going to get the piss taken out of it, yeah. I mean, that's our ground for the next 100 years as well. You should lead the resistance, Mark, says Xavier. The fans are ready to act, but need someone to mobilise everybody. We are with you. Mate, after the show last night, I had to go for a long walk. I'm going to pick up on some of the stuff for it, but I had to go for a long walk last night because the amount of threats and abuse I got last night, again, was just, you know, I'm not going to stop doing the United Stands. And there's loads of other people who have similar opinions. I'll read out what the 58 said about the interview last night in a little bit. Red Army have come out against it as well. So look, I know I'm on the right side, and the right side is what I believe, not what everyone else believes. But what I found most disappointing, and I don't even want to say I told you so this morning, was the amount of people that were sort of like saying, you know, why are you so negative? You're always so negative. And I felt like, I didn't want to go live again, but I felt like saying, hold on a minute. I'm negative, right? We're in the bottom half of the table. We're in huge debt. Our biggest rivals are miles ahead of us and are going to get miles ahead of us. We've got owners who've destroyed the club over the last 2 decades who aren't going to go for the next 2 decades. I mean, I mustn't have got the party invite. I mean, why am I so negative? I don't understand, you know. And there was people after that interview last night who were going, I thought it was a bloody good interview. You know, I thought Sir Jim, you know, finally spoke to us and I understand what he's doing. And I was like, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But you don't need to attack people who saw it for what it was. And as I said, I woke up this morning, I haven't got dizziness, but everybody who loved that interview last night must be spinning like a bloody Anthony. Because you got spun. You got played by the Glazers, not Sir Jim. Not Gary, they're just puppets for the Glazers. You got played by the Glazers. You got absolutely played by the Glazers again. And you know, maybe feel a bit embarrassed. But 2018 this all started with the Glazers' letter to Trafford Council. And today is the accumulation of their amazing business sense again. Get somebody in who can front and get the government backing, Sir Jim. Get him to give you a bit of money for it, Sir Jim. Still run the club in the background and don't get any of the shit. Double your money on the football club. Get that stadium built. Get the regeneration built. Stay behind, but still run the football club. Glazers. Keep the debt. Glazers. Did you read this as well? I mean, I've got to go through some of your comments, but look, just in relation to some of the stuff from the interview last night, I watched the BBC one. And again, for anybody who doesn't think it's spin, if it's not spin, how can Sir Jim Ratcliffe do an identical interview with Dan Rowan from the BBC that he did with Gary Neville if it's not preempted? But look, this is what Sir Jim Ratcliffe said about Sir Alex Ferguson and taking the money off him. I sat down with Sir Alex Ferguson and said to him that the club is spending more than it's making. We're going to be in trouble and we can't afford to keep paying him £2 million a year. I gave him time to think about it and he came back three days later after speaking to his son and said, fine, I'm going to stand down. That's my decision. I think that's a very good reflection on Alex because he put the club before himself. I mean, have you ever heard such off the mark bullshit in all your life? So Sir Alex Ferguson, whatever you think about him, and I think he's a legend, Sir Jim Ratcliffe sits him down and says, I need to sack you really. I want to take your £2 million a year job off you because the club's broke, Sir Alex. So, I need to take that off you. And then Sir Alex agrees to it. And then Sir Jim says, that's a really good reflection on Sir Alex that because the club's in trouble, he's put himself in before it. Now that I'm thinking this could be Braveheart 2. Get Sir Alex in a kilt. This could be Braveheart 2 time. I mean, this is a movie. I'm filling up. Until I wake up and climb through the spin and go, hold on a minute. Hold on a minute. You sit there with Sir Alex Ferguson on £2 million a year and sack him and say, look, this is how great Sir Alex is, putting himself before the club. But you work with the Glazers, who cost you about £40 million a year in debt interest payments, and they own the club. So let me get this right. That what we're basically doing at Manchester United is that, and what the whole interview was about really, when it comes to cutting charities, canteens, ticket price rises. Basically, what Sir Jim's plan is that ordinary working people are going to pay for their mistakes, and we should be appreciative of that. So, I mean, it's almost like 1800s again, isn't it? Factory workers, working for crap money and being treated like shit. So Sir Alex Ferguson lost his job to help the club survive, whilst the Glazers, who own the club, just pay £30 million a year on debt interest. The spin is incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I tell you what I thought was disgusting as well. I don't know whether you saw it. He actually sat there and went, well, at the end of the day, when we were sacking people, we were paying 175 grand a year to a body language expert. I mean, what's that all about? Well, I don't need a body language expert to tell me you're talking shit, mate. So one person in 450 people was actually somebody that should have been sacked. But you're going to sit there and justify the sacking of 450 people because one of them was a body language expert on 175k a week. I mean, what a horrific way to further disrespect the amount of good working people at that football club who are actually out of work now. Incredible. But the creme de la creme for me was this comment here, which I will read you. About the Glazers, funnily enough. He said, in relation to the Glazers and the blame, not now, but over the last 10 years, how much are the Glazers at fault? Well, at the end of the day, they're 3,000 miles away, and they gave the management a lot of rope. If you look at some of the other characters in English football that are owners, they're heavily involved in details of running the club. I'm going to stop doing that. They gave management an awful lot of rope, too much rope, obviously. The previous two teams of management have to take a lot of the blame. The decisions they made at the club, I'm afraid, it's not just the Glazer family. Why did I miss this last night? So basically, Sir Jim Ratcliffe talking about the Glazers over the last 10 years, not now. They're 3,000 miles away. It's not their fault. It's the management who ran the football club's fault, not the Glazers. Okay, so if I own a restaurant and I live around the corner and the restaurant fails for 10 years, it's not my fault because I live around the corner. Even though everybody's complaining on TripAdvisor and telling me it's shit, it's actually not my, but I live around the corner. I live around the corner. I mean, you know, it's incredible. Look, Tahir says it was a great interview by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Mate, look, the United Stand is an amazing community, but you don't have to be here. I don't know why you think it's your community, and I don't know why you think you can shout and scream that it was a good interview. I think it was a shit interview. I think it was spin. And I think you've woke up this morning and realised it, but want to double down because I told you so. But a lot of people will agree with Tahir. It's not my community, it's not your community, it's just a soundbox. But if you don't think you've been spun, well, this is why we fail as a fan base. He's literally sitting there and saying that the last 10 years is not the Glazers' fault, it's the management's fault that the Glazers employed. But the hilarious thing is that every journalist, every employee at Man United knows for a fact that Joel Glazer ran that football club daily. You couldn't buy a new bloody loaf of bread without Joel Glazer saying so. And yet now we're being told, oh, they're 3,000 miles away. Joel Glazer's still signing stuff off. But Sir Jim's like, oh, you know, they're not that involved, really. You know, they just let us do what we want. You know, puppets. Sir Jim's a puppet. Gary's a puppet. The government's a puppets. They're all puppets in a game that they maybe don't realise they've got strings on. The Glazers have played you. They've played you all. 2018, they set the regeneration project in motion. You're just the pawns to get it in place. There we go. It's just, look, I don't do I told you so, but you got played. You got played. And let's just read out just some of the things from, obviously the protests at the weekend were organised by the 1958. This is what they've had to say. How is this going to be financed? £750 million of debt, a constant weight around the club's neck. Will fans be expected to pay for it? We've triggered our strategy to find out. Also, more borrowing from the bank, club bust by Christmas. The debt will be cleared when we're successful. How? Message to Sir Jim, protests are not about football performance or league position. They never have been. We protest to save our community, to keep real fans going to watch United, young and old. Protests are against 20 years of Glazer greed, 1 billion stolen, 1 billion in debt, 170 million in dividends. Get the Glazers to remove the debt, which the club pays millions a year in interest. Get them gone. Remove the elephant in the room. So look, they obviously are the people doing the protests, and I think that is the elephant in the room, isn't it? I don't know whether I've made it clear. I don't know whether they've made it clear. I think it's very, very obvious. But you know, when you say spin, spin, it's not whether you like Sir Jim or you like the new stadium. The spin is who's the people who are winning. Who's the people who own Man United? Who are the people who are going to benefit from all this? Who are the people that are using Sir Jim and Gary and everyone else to get what they want? That's the spin. It's not whether you like Sir Jim's clothes or you liked his questions or you liked his answers or anything like that. Who's pulling the strings at the top? The Glazers. And nobody in this chat likes the Glazers. No journalist likes the Glazers. But you're all being played. You're all being played. Beth's praising the stadium. Well, maybe she likes the Glazers. I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not... What are you going to say? Sack Beth. Beth's fantastic. Brilliant. She's entitled to her opinion. Funnily enough, I don't actually care if people have a different opinion. I might argue with them, but I don't dislike you. I just passionately believe in my own thing. It might shock you, but most of my life, friends, family, etc., we have different opinions and we have arguments about it. but it doesn't mean I wouldn't buy you a pint. It doesn't mean I wouldn't play Monopoly with you. I'm very passionate about my opinion. I think people who take it too far and get aggressive and name calling and stuff like that, which sometimes I do, and I apologise for that, but genuine threats and stuff like that, it's too much. But what you don't realise is, in my eyes, and I'll give you an insight, in my eyes, when I see people defending that interview and saying it was good, or defending the stadium, or saying let's be positive, I see Sir Jim Ratcliffe as a puppet now. I see Gary Neville as a puppet. I see that stadium as a smokescreen. And I see the Glazers pulling the strings. So when I see you defending that, I see you as a Glazer sympathiser. You might be offended by that, but that's what I see, because I see all of this as spin. I see protests on Sunday, I see a scripted interview on Monday, and I see an announcement on Tuesday that doesn't actually need to be announced. Doesn't need to be announced. You know, when you cut it through, what have we got? We've got a few pictures, and this is what we want to do. We've not got it's going to happen. We've not got it starting on Monday. Why has it been announced today? Oh, do you think it's a coincidence that there was protests on Sunday, an interview on Monday, and pictures on Tuesday? I mean, Craig David's going to come in and do something on Wednesday in a minute, isn't he? So this thing today doesn't act. This wasn't planned last week. Well, it probably was when they knew about the protest, but this is just a few pictures, and we want to build a stadium. You know, I feel a moron myself. You know, when I think about it, there's no actual reason to announce this morning. There's no government backing yet. There's no D-Day. There's no we're starting building tomorrow or in June. It's literally just, here we go, everybody, look at the stadium we're building. Look at the stadium. And in the future, we're going to be really rich. But, you know, I just think it is what it is. It's pure spin. I want to talk about Yoro. I want to talk about Mateta. But there was a couple of other things I just wanted to go through as well. And I've got to get through some of your comments as well. Yeah, just be very wary. I know I've already said it. Just be very wary of these accounts out there that start talking about, you know, what do you want Sir Jim to do? You know, his plan is to get hold of the club. Mate, are you really being serious about that again? I mean, you lied about that 18 months ago, that when Sir Jim got the club, there'd be a pathway to buying the club by 2026. That was a bullshit myth. And they're doing it again. There's people again going, I actually really like Sir Jim, and you know, he's clearly got a pathway to buying the whole club. Whoa. Are you really that thick? When has he ever said he's got a pathway to buying the football club? He did an interview with Andy Mitten 2 months ago and said he isn't doing that. But also, this, which they've been planning since 2018, the Glazers, just got signed off today. Why do you think they were planning that in 2018, 6 years before they sold the part of the club? Because of this. They've just got that. As if the Glazers are given a pathway to selling the bloody football club in the next 20 years. They're going to build that stadium and they're going to milk it dry. For 20 years at least. They'll be here for the next 20 years. They're about to double their money the minute the government sign this off. They're not going anywhere. So the only thing I would say with absolute confidence is don't listen to people who start talking about pathways to buying the whole club from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Sir Jim Ratcliffe will be 92 in 20 years' time. And hopefully, God willing, you'll still be here. But the Glazers aren't going for 20 years. They've just got something that they're going to be paying off for the next 15 years, 5 years after it's built. And they're going to want to make the money from it. So why are you saying 20 years, Mark? 5 years to build it, 15 years to pay it off, 20 years it becomes massively profitable. So 20 years at least of the Glazers. And people are saying that Sir Jim's got a pathway to buying it. Sir Jim's 72. Mark, I know you probably won't believe me, but remember I said this. I know someone close to the son of Dan Ashworth. He was given a list of 150 people to sack. He refused and was gone the next day, says Cameron. We'll never know. We'll never know about Ashworth, mate. Ian Motter says, the big takeaway for me is that the Premier League trophy will never again be lifted at Old Trafford. It might be in 25 years. If their plan goes to, if everything goes to plan, it might be in 25 years. If you think about it, like, if they build the stadium, pay it off, we could do what Arsenal have done. Arsenal spent £100 million on Declan Rice 2 years ago, 20 years after they built their new stadium. So maybe in 20-something years. How fitting the Glazers and Ineos are running a circus, says Neptune. They were involved when vacuuming dividends, says Frank. Glazers out, Ineos out, Neville out, says Flash Talks. Ahmed Khan, welcome to the Members Club. I've never heard such a load of bullshit. Thank you, Mark, says Tracy Taylor. Hopefully the new Stretford end is a single tier safe standing like the Yellow Wall. New stadiums can suffer from a lack of atmosphere, says Joel. Any idea what the new stad is going to be called, says Daniel Sturtridge. Snapdragon, Ineos, something like that. Well, look, honestly, I'm not being sarcastic. If they're knocking Old Trafford down, and watch my video this morning, I just feel so sad about that. If they're knocking Old Trafford down, you'd be stupid not to just call it whatever the highest bidder says, you know. Any idea if you already want to stop this, get political, says Keel. It looks more like a circus, says TV show. It looks like a glorified Butlins, pure comedy, says Addy. Mark, the interview felt scripted. Questions seemed like they were asked to make us think positive about a future. It's sad to see the history of Old Trafford gone for a new stadium, says Vaben. Look, I think the interview is almost irrelevant now. You know, the minute that interview was out, the new stadium stuff came out. And look, the only thing I take from that interview is Sir Jim is clearly a puppet for the Glazers. They've won again, and this was building up to the stadium, which is what it's all about. So we know a lot more. We know a lot more. Neil, thank you very much. Horrendous that stadium gives Butlin vibes, says JB. Looks like a luxury hotel spa in Saudi Arabia, says Sanil. Just want to say, having done visualisation work for Norman Foster, most schemes don't end up looking like the renders. They're done purely for impact, says Nick P. I mean, yeah, that's a fair point, Nick. Thank you very much. It might not end up looking like that. Looks like it's covered in cobwebs before it's built, says Gaz. Thank you very much. Can locals object? Planning permission, says Britain. And our teenagers now have nothing for the future, says MMA Takedown. Thank you to Cameron. I actually kind of like the design, but I'm sick to my stomach that we're leaving Old Trafford. Feels like being oppressed by fascists. Thanks for everything, Mark, says Ahmed. Appreciate that. Look, everyone's entitled to their opinion, as we saw last night. But I think just before we just talk about Yoro and Mateta, just to pick up on this whole last few days, starting with the protests, interviews last night, announcement of a new stadium today. I get in the word spin, of course, but I'm also getting a 4-letter word that nobody really has delved into, debt. I just think, like, it's really sad when you hear Sir Alex Ferguson talking about, you know, we've got to be brave and move away from Old Trafford, and no mention of why we're moving away from Old Trafford. I'm old enough, and many of you are old enough to remember the regeneration of Old Trafford in the 90s and early noughties. We basically rebuilt it. When the Glazers came in, they stopped. For 20 years, we've not touched Old Trafford. An hour away, Anfield has been renovated and is ridiculously modern, and they'll never leave it. That, to not be mentioned by any media outlet or any legend of the club, is disgusting to me. You can be excited about a new stadium and no one's telling you not to be. But the reason we're knocking Old Trafford down is not because we need a new stadium. It's because our spiritual home is getting knocked down because the Glazers, who've won again, I mean, when are they ever going to be held accountable for what they've done? You know, in a footballing sense, they should be doing a prison sentence. It's criminal. And they've won again. They've got exactly what they want again. They've got their new regeneration project and stadium, which they've been planning for a decade, and they're knocking Old Trafford down in the name of Sir Jim Ratcliffe to get away with it. And Old Trafford should never be knocked down. It should never have been knocked down. It should have been renovated. It should have been modified over the years, and they let that happen. So to see Sir Alex Ferguson and Gary Neville, legends of this football club, talking about exciting new projects, fine. But why are you not acknowledging that this never should have happened in the first place and that our spiritual home has been left to rot and rust purposely so that the Glazers could do this? That's disappointing. And also, amongst all the questions about charity drops and ticket price rises and everything like that, why is the scrutiny on the debt not been done properly in that opportunity with Sir Jim Ratcliffe? And why is Sir Jim Ratcliffe sat there saying that the Glazers aren't at fault for the last 10 years? It's the management team that they appointed. Why is he defending these people? Why is the debt not the front of every question? And that's what I talk about when I talk about interviewing tactics. Quite rightly, he probably wouldn't have done the interview. But if he won't, somebody said last night and they made a great point. It's all right being critical of the interview, but if those questions had been asked, Sir Jim would not have done the interview. So you're admitting what I'm saying, that it's pure spin. If he won't answer the questions, he'll only answer certain questions. It's scripted and it's spin and it's PR. So you were right, but you didn't acknowledge that we were right. What I said was, that's a PR spin scripted interview. And some people said, no, it's a good interview. And, he wouldn't answer those hard questions, so why ask them anyway? But if he won't answer the hard questions, then it therefore is scripted and spin, isn't it? And the hard question would be, when he talks about sacking Sir Alex, or raising ticket prices, or it not being the Glazers' fault, or we've got to make tough decisions, or we've got to pay £89 million in the summer, and it's going to be tough to buy players. When he's talking about all that, every single one of those things, you should be going, but you're paying £30 million a year in debt interest because of the Glazers. Why? Well, it's different. No. Listen, Sir Jim. You're sacking somebody on £2 million a year. You're raising ticket prices. You're getting rid of the canteen. You're sacking 450 people. And you're talking about making difficult decisions for the betterment of the club. But you're paying £30 million a year on debt interest from the owners. You're a businessman, mate. Come on. Admit that's disgusting. Well, at the end of it, no. You're paying £30 million a year in debt interest and you're sacking people like Sir Alex Ferguson, 450 people, and you're saying you're doing it for the betterment of the club. But you're paying £30 million a year in debt interest. That's not right, is it? And that's what a lot of people are talking about. It's like, yeah, he did a very good job of pushing away why he needs to sack people and why he needs to make cuts, but won't talk about the debt, which is draining this football club. Logically. Constantine says, I hate the Glazers, but if the team were performing, I wouldn't mind as much. It's a double whammy. Josh Burke says, so according to Jim, the real faithful fans are the only ones who can afford a season ticket and go to every single game. Guess I'm not faithful then. I mean, Josh, I've read that. I've seen that. I know it's upset a lot of people that he was talking about faithful fans and season ticket holders. It's a dangerous thing because if you're a season ticket holder, you're getting a glow up. You're going to feel great because he's saying you're the real fans. If you go home and away and you're a season ticket holder, you're the real fans. So people get quite proud about that and would go, yeah, he's talking sense. But you're also alienating millions of other fans. And look, this is a guy that basically is a Chelsea season ticket holder. This is I don't get what his point is really. But I don't want to play that game either. I mean, if you're a Man United fan, you're a Man United fan. I've always said I don't think any less of any fan. You talk about faithful fans, season ticket holder who lives next door to Old Trafford and walks 5 minutes and 5 minutes there and 5 minutes home and has a decent job and can afford the season ticket. Fair play. Poor Man United fan who lives in India and gets up at 4 o'clock every morning to watch the last 10 years of Man United. Not a faithful fan then. Could be getting some sleep, But this is what I mean. I don't like the whole you're a real fan. We used to argue about this 10 years ago. What's a real fan? Where's the top red book? I don't think in my life I've ever sat there with a United fan and had an argument about who's the bestest fan. I just think it belongs in a playground. It's ridiculous. So I find Sir Jim Ratcliffe's comment about it childish because I just think it's a playground conversation. Could you actually imagine walking down the street and seeing a couple of fans of the same club arguing about who's the best fan? I mean, is that not the definition of insecurity? It's like being at the traffic lights with two millionaires and one's in a Porsche and one's in a Ferrari. I'm richer than you. Look at my shoes. Look at my car. I mean, it's just... What is that all about if it's not spin again to try and distract you? Distract. Everything is distracting from the debt. The interview, the new stadium pictures, sacking people. Oh, can I distract? I know I've sacked 450 people, but one of them was a body language expert, so I'm justified. Distract. Citizen Z says the stadium announcement is probably to move the media on from the interview. Another sad day for United. Sully says it absolutely stuns me that you get death threats because you do this. I'm sorry, Mark. Nobody deserves to deal with that. Thank you, mate. I actually kind of like the design, but I'm sick to my stomach. We're leaving Old Trafford, says Ahmed. Thank you very much. Okay. There is still so much to get into. We've got a 2 o'clock show. I'm going to try and get Terry coming on at 2 o'clock, actually, because I think he's a fan of Ineos. So I might ask him if he wants to come on and we'll do a live sort of Q&A. I think that'd be quite good. But it is a news show. We've had a lot to speak about this morning. Just to bring it back to football, big game on Thursday. Regardless of whether you like the stadium or not, you're not going to see it for 5 years at least. I mean, 5 years, 5 Christmases, 5 years. It's... 5 years is a long time. If you think you're just going to sit there with a smile on your face for 5 years, waiting for this, and then you've got to pay it off for 15 years. I mean, if you're happy to sit waiting for 20 years, it's a great day for you. But reality is, we're going to be playing football games, and we've got one on Thursday. I mentioned it on the morning show yesterday that we'd been told that the Lenny Yoro injury was a massive concern. Lo and behold, last night it's come out that he's not expected to play on Thursday. And there are concerns that it could be a considerable period of time out. When I say a considerable period of time, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, season ender, I don't know. But yeah, certainly not good news with that. And also the rumour is that Maguire's out for a while as well. So that leaves that one area now that we were actually okay in, not okay. So we've got no full-back cover. We've got no goalkeeper cover. We've got no midfield cover. We've got no number 10 cover. We've got no striker cover. And now we've got no centre-back cover. So, yeah, it's just another thing, isn't it? The season ticket comment is meant to divide the fan base even more to make the protests weaker. Just another Glazer mouth. I mean, that's a great point. Hey, sorry about your face. When I look at the last 24 hours and the interview and the stadium and the comments, and I look at the comments on social media and the amount of people that were actually sympathetic to Sir Jim Radcliffe, I thought we will always lose. Because to me, most of what he said in that interview was sickening, horrific, and he came across as a Glazer puppet. But a lot of people defended him. And I thought the interview was appalling from him. I thought he came across really bad, and a lot of people defended him. So imagine if he actually spun a few positives. We've lost. But the Glazers have won. I don't think Sir Jim wins anything. It's the Glazers who are in charge. It's the Glazers who run the football club. It's the Glazers who own half the football club. It's the Glazers who aren't going anywhere. And it's the Glazers who put us into debt. And the fact that people think Sir Jim Radcliffe owns the football club is hilarious. I mean, if you're ever thinking about taking a pop at anybody or getting into an argument about anybody, about any of this, just say, do you disagree with me that the Glazers own the football club and pull the strings? And if they disagree with you, don't get into an argument with an idiot. Don't. And if they want to argue with you when you've said that, they're obviously a Glazer sympathiser. It's my company work plus first time seeing it. I can second previous commentator that designs often change from initial concepts, but we need to resolve team and performance, says Big Z. Nobody was bothered about a new stadium until the interview came out. A new stadium is the least of our worries, says Harry Clarkson. I travelled from India to watch Man United and have a season ticket, so I'm a conundrum for Radcliffe, says Mojo. Great point. Hope you're doing well, mate. Mark Lawton says, I hope this fuels the protests even more. The majority of global fans that were insulted in the interview must hurt the pockets of our ownership and just show how much we matter, says Mark Lawton. But as I said last night, the hilarious thing about insulting the non-season ticket fans around the world is that if the Premier League authorised us to play Liverpool in India tomorrow, we'd love to. Or America, we'd love to. Not me, the club would love to do that. They'd love to commercialise this football club even more. And they wouldn't give a shit about the legacy fans. So that's what mercenaries do. They'll play whatever group they can as long as it keeps them in power and makes them money. And look, as I said, we're getting lost in stuff here. That interview last night is irrelevant to me. It doesn't mean anything. It's just it's just pure spin. It's two people on the same committee who are trying to get this regeneration project off the ground that will massively benefit the Glazers. And it's a guy in Sir Jim Radcliffe who sat there defending the Glazers, saying that they live too far away to be blamed for the last 10 years. It's just a puppet. And the Glazers are the real enemy of the football club. Mateta, very, very quickly, apparently Crystal Palace want more than £40 million. Apparently, the stories over the weekend that Man United can get Mateta for £40 million have offended Crystal Palace, and they're basically saying, why on earth would we sell a player like Mateta for £40 million with 2 years left on his contract? So, yeah, if you were getting excited about Mateta, probably not going to be as cheap as was being reported, definitely. Do you fancy that? I will speak to Terry and see if I can get him on at 2 o'clock, and we'll have a bit of a back and forth. I think that might be quite good. Certainly still loads to digest, so I think that might be quite good. I'm 7 o'clock tonight because of the Liverpool PSG game, Champions League watch-alongs, but I can arrange that for 2 o'clock. I think that might be quite interesting to carry it on. There's still a lot of people with a lot to say. I'll leave you with this masterpiece, or as some would say, it looks more like a mantelpiece. Where's the best picture to show you? There you go. Stunning. Bring on the clowns. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. I'll speak to you in a bit.